Hello and welcome back to GearHeadGeeks, where in this video we're going to be covering some useful tools that you might not normally have in your toolbox. Yes, you've got wrenches, you've got screwdrivers, you've got some sockets, you've got ratchets and all that stuff. That's not what this is about. We're going to talk about tools that fall outside of that you can use on maybe most anything, but mostly for motorcycle mechanics. So stick with us and we'll get to it. So here are some tools that everybody who owns a motorcycle or works on motorcycles should have. What they are seal cleaning tools. Now, why are these important? Well, first of all, that everybody's under the belief that you can blow seals when you do a wheelie and the seal gets blown. Well, not really. 98% of the time, the seal is not blown at all. What happens is, if a seal is blown, it has to physically rip or wear out, and that can happen. But if something happens all of a sudden, so let's just say your fork seals are just fine, and you go off and yank off a wheelie and you pound it down hard, and all of a sudden your forks are leaking and you think, oh, my seals are blown. No, they are not. 99% of the time is nothing more than you've picked up a piece of dirt. Well, how come I picked up a piece of dirt when I just did a wheelie? Well, what ends up happening is you lost the front wheel and the suspension goes out all the way, great. But when you put it back down, it collapses the suspension all the way, which isn't really normal. You don't hardly ever do that. And what happens is a bug or a chunk of dirt or something that was on the fork gets lodged in the seal, and now you have a piece of dirt in there making it leak. Well, these tools, this one here, which is one that you wrap around your forks, you hook it in, you give it a twist, this edge right here will grab the dirt, pull it down, and you can just pull it out and the leak is fixed. And this works at least 90% of the time. We're not talking about seals that are old and, have been, over time leaked because of the fact that they're old, dry, brittle, cracked, whatever they are, or even out of place. We're talking about seals that all of a sudden just started to leak. There's another one called a seal mate. And the seal mate is basically the same thing. What you do is you kind of get the dust seal out of the way, and you just take this and you push it up inside, and it kind of wraps around the fork, and you give it a lap around. Once you give it a good lap, it will pull that dirt out, and again, 90% of the time, it's just going to fix it. So these are really important tools to have as a motorcycle mechanic and as a rider. Anytime that you own a bike, you should have something like this, especially since replacing seals is not the smallest job in the world. So here are some tools that are really, really handy to have when you're working on any kind of electricals in your bike, your car, whatever, and they are what are called power probes. They really, really make life a lot easier. I've got a couple different types sitting here, and I'll explain what they do. A power probe is a way to be able to check an electronic circuit, inject voltages, inject grounds, look at different things that happen, like if you want to see if your fuel injector is pulsing and things like that. So most power probes will allow you to do all of that functionality. So first, let me roll the camera over here and we'll get pointing at this battery sitting over here. And our first one will be an inexpensive power probe. This is called a BT250. I got this off of, I believe, AliExpress. I think you can get them on Amazon. There's all sorts of places to buy ones just like this. These are the Chinese version, and they basically are made by Autotool. A-U-T-O-O-L. So you should be able to find that, the BT250. So now, how does this work? Well, we'll do a simple demonstration. The first thing that has to happen with all power probes, though, is you need to hook them up to a battery. It's not like a meter where you just go up to it and check your voltage. They need to be hooked up to a battery of some form, and we have a motorcycle battery right here. And if you look, we now have a display, and this has 4 different types of functions in them, really. What it does is, first of all, it has a voltage display. So, all we need to do is, if we want to see what the voltage is on something, let's see if I can make sure that I keep this going. Yeah, you should be able to see that. Can you? Yeah. And I'll touch that, and we can see it now change over, and it shows us that we have 12 volts. Okay, so it's a voltmeter, and it works just perfectly for that. So it's got a ground probe on it. So if you've got if you need to hook it up, if you're on a separate battery like this, you can just hook this up to the ground on your car or your bike or whatever it's going to be, hooked it to the ground, and you're going to be able to use all the functionality of this. Number 2 is, it is a voltage or ground injector. So let's just say that you have a circuit that you want to put 12 volts to. Well, we're going to use a bulb here. This is just a plain old light bulb, and I'm going to put this up against the ground, and then I'm going to put this on the other end, and it's showing, and it's reading 0 volts. But watch what happens. I can do this, and I can, whoops, let me get that in there, and I'm going to inject 12 volts. And look, I can now inject 12 volts into that, and that allows us to check a circuit. You go in and say this circuit's dead, you inject 12 volts, you can check your bulbs, do whatever you want to do. And you can also inject ground. So what we're going to do here is we'll put this one on the positive, and I can touch this side, and it's reading 12 volts on there. And the reason it reads 12 volts because it's going through the bulb itself. But if I want to light it up, I can inject ground. And so if the circuit is powered up and you just need to check, you think it's got a bad ground, you can put this on where the ground is, hit this, and be able to do that, and be able to light up whatever. This has got a couple functioning LEDs, so you can kind of point where it's going. The next function is, this thing can actually look at frequencies. So if you want to see if a injector or something is working, you can watch it do that. And I'm just going to go on ahead and touch this. I'm going to make sure that you guys can see. But I'm going to go ahead and just touch this, and you're going to see this guy is going to have a little graph of how I'm touching it. And if that was an injector pulsing, you would see that. So that's one of them. This one's also got what's called a continuity test. You put it on the little ohm guide. And all we have to do here is, I'm going to do this with the bench. Well, actually, I'll just do it against this. And I can just touch this to the end, and it'll say 0 ohms. If it had resistance in there, that would be a higher reading. And then lastly, it's got a diode check in it, so you can put this on a diode, and it'll tell you if the diode's any good. But these are really, really, really handy. So next, let me turn this off. And I've got a more expensive version here. And to be quite honest, this is more useful around motorcycles. The smaller BT220, this is really inexpensive. These are like, I don't know, $35 or something of that nature. This one was about $200, which is way too much money for... The reason it's way too much money, it has a lot of functionality in it, but the main reason I bought it is because it was supposed to be able to hook up to your computer, pair up with Bluetooth, and the program that they give you doesn't work. And I've finally searched and searched and searched and found an old program that did work. When I tried to contact Power Probe, they just said, we don't know. We didn't write the program. That's unacceptable. Power Probes are really good. If you get this is called the Maestro, and in my books, it's not worth it. The best one of the Power Probes is the Power Probe 3. It doesn't have too much fancy stuff on it. I mean, this is a really good device. It truly is, but it's not that much better than anything else. Let me, we'll go on ahead and it's got some serious cables in it, but this is for automotive work, so you can just be able to clip onto your battery and be able to go wherever you need to. So we'll clip this guy on. Okay, our lights come on, and our power probe tech, the Maestro, and we can now see our voltage. 12.18 volts, and we can do the exact same thing we did before. If we want to inject a voltage into something, we can just take this. I can do this. It's hard to hold on to this thing. Okay, and same with the positive and negative. We can now inject a ground to it. And it's got some good lights and stuff on it. And this one does have the same type of, you can then be able to see all what it's doing in there. There's a lot going on with this. This is a much better device than this one, but this one is much easier to use. And for a motorcycle mechanic, for 20-30 bucks, this is a great tool to have. This is fancy, but it's more useful, but the other one's better, I think, for your basic home mechanic. So another essential tool that is readily available are endoscopes. There are so many good ones out there for inexpensive with articulating heads, and you can come up with a really good endoscope, just how much you can afford. But if you don't want to spend a lot of money, you can obviously do it a couple of ways. Some endoscopes plug into your phone. You can just plug into your phone, and those things are cheap. You can get it for like $10-12. I've got this Vivor here, which at the time was pretty good. I've had it for a while, and the reason it was good is because the head had 3 cameras, a straight ahead camera and 2 side cameras, so you could stick it down in there, and even though the head doesn't articulate, you at least had a camera and a light pointing in the right direction. This works okay. I would think the articulating ones are better, but this was not very expensive. This was probably about $40, and let's roll the camera down here a little bit so you can see a little better, and just go on ahead and turn this guy on. And so all we're going to do, we'll go look at we'll just go look at ourselves here. We can just see what's going on, and then all that you need to do is you can hit it like that. Oops, wrong one. I got to go this way. Oops, go back to our normal camera. There's our camera again, and then you hit down, and then it goes into the side camera, and you hit down again, and it goes to the other side camera. So that allows you to look inside the bore and see the sides and see what's going on. Hit it again, and you go back to the front camera. So this is actually a pretty useful tool, and it was inexpensive. Vivor makes pretty decent stuff. You know, when you get something from Vivor, it's going to be pretty good. The newer articulated ones, I'd say, would be better, but this kind of does the job just fine. Let me hold on to that, turn it off, maybe, and it powers off. Now, I bought this one, and this is a ridiculous piece of crap. This was probably a Temu or AliExpress, and you turn it on, and it comes on. It's got a little light on it, but the picture resolution is just kind of terrible. There's really 0 adjustments on it. You just kind of live with what you see. it will get you by. But then again, this thing was probably only $10, $12, but you can see it's not really great. The picture's really washed out. The light, I guess, is too bright or something. I don't know. But there's no adjustments of any form on it. So get a better one than this. So another really useful tool is an infrared thermometer. This is the Harbor Freight version of it. It was relatively inexpensive, but they're really useful, especially if you're working on multi-cylinder bikes or something like that, and you're not sure if all four cylinders, if you got a miss, you want to see which cylinder isn't running or running correctly. You can take this and aim it at each exhaust pipe and get a reading on it. And let's see if I can't get a, oops, guess I need to, so then whatever it's pointing at, it will go on and take a reading, and you can then figure out what's going on with it. You can see if one cylinder is running cold or whatever you want to do. There's all sorts of good uses for this. This is a really useful tool to have. So, and another extremely useful tool is a battery tester. This is a top-down. This is an inexpensive one, but it works good for the motorcycle stuff. And the reason these are so important is you can have battery problems, cranking problems, and if your battery's bad, this is going to tell you. Instead of just going out and buying a new battery, maybe you just need to be charged properly. Or if you charge it up and it doesn't do anything, this will tell you if it's the battery or you got some other problem. And these are fairly easy to use. So let's roll down to our battery here. And this little battery's got about, from what I understand, about 140 cold cranking amps. I looked it up. That size battery just goes to about 140. It's a small 6 amp battery. So all that you do is you hook it up, and whoops, I guess you got to clamp it on a little better than that. And then it tells you the voltage of the battery, and you go okay, and then you just do your battery test. Okay, and we are AGM flat plate. Cold cranking amps, you go okay. It's set to 140, that's what this is. You go okay. It'll test. And give you, so our health is 100%. Yeah, that's basically a new battery. Our charge is only 37%. It's really not charged up all that well. Internal resistance, and it's good charging. It's a good battery, and that's all there is to it. And this thing will save you a ton of money. I've had problems with other batteries that I thought were having issues. Take this, and it works. Or you have a battery that seems to be okay, but maybe down the road, it's, you know, when it gets warm or something, it gives you trouble. This will help you diagnose that and save you a ton of time and a ton of anxiety. So, one of the things that is a must-have for any motorcycle mechanic that's going to be working in a shop, in his own shop, at home, is a multimeter. Multimeters come in an array of different styles, prices. You can get anything from $10 up to thousands of dollars for multimeters. Harbor Freight has some nice multimeters. I like them. I have some that I put in a toolkit, and if for some reason it gets hurt or abused or lost, it's fine. It was 10 bucks, you know. Then there are other meters, such as this Fluke, which is a relatively expensive meter, but it's also a very durable, accurate, good meter. Get what you like. So let's explore a few of the different types that you can actually have. We'll go back to the bench here, back to our battery and everything. And now we'll start with your basic, normal old meter. Well, again, Fluke's a good one. So the first thing you want to do is be able to check voltage. So we can, I think in this particular case, this will stand up, and we'll go to our battery. Now you see it fluctuating around. It's just measuring the voltage in the air, and you can put your fingers on it and generate a little bit of voltage, but you go on ahead and we'll put it on our battery, and we see it's at 12.18 volts, 29, just going on there. If I hook it up backwards, we'll see a negative voltage and a little negative. Very, very simple to use. You can check AC voltage if you're like checking a socket or something like that. Let's see if we can get that in there without electrocuting ourselves. We got 123 AC volts. That's just on the wall socket. And we can also check continuity, where we want to see if we have continuity. Well, this is a metal bench, so we should have about 0 ohms or close to it. And we do. We have 0 ohms on our bench. So basic meter functionality. You don't need to do much more than that. There's capacitor checks and there's diode checks and all sorts of other things on this. But in this case, just to get an idea of what it can do. Now, that's one style. Then there's another style. This is a very inexpensive. This is probably about $5, and it's nothing more than this little meter that you can turn on. Hopefully, gotta hold the button here. And it comes on. And we'll hook it up to our battery, and I will go on ahead and make sure you can see it. Move the battery over here, and we'll touch it, and it says 12.24 volts. Yeah, there's going to be discrepancies in the meters and how much resistance is in a line. So that's one thing it does. But this guy's kind of automatic. He can also do continuity. So we'll do the same thing. We'll touch to the bench here, and this is showing about 4 ohms through there. Just how dirty the part of the bench I'm on is. There's 2 ohms, 3 ohms. If I go up here, it goes to 11 ohms. But just touching each other, it goes to 0 ohms. And it's automatic. I didn't make any changes or do anything. And there's a little hold button on it, and it's got a little backlight on it. Very inexpensive, gets the job done. You can do that. And turn it off so you don't fiddle around with batteries. Then there's this other one. This is a kind of an interesting one, which is kind of nice because it has some good functionality in it. So if we want to check voltage, we can turn it on. And the battery's kind of going dead in here, but you can, what's nice about this is you can just kind of use it and then the other probe, and away we go. We can see our voltage and be able to use this at like a pen, so you're not having to fiddle around with 2 wires and then hold it somewhere else. You can kind of hold this up and see what you're doing and get the readings that you need. And then you can switch it over to ohms, and we'll measure our bench again, and it's showing 0.1 ohms. So this is another alternative. Not a bad way to go. So the next essential tool that I feel is necessary to have is a little mini belt sander. These guys are really, really useful for many, many purposes, especially if you're doing any kind of fabricating, or you're mounting a different type of tail light, or doing something, or even if you have to create a ground somewhere where you need to be able to, strip off a little paint and be able to repaint, be able to get a good ground on it. So it is really worthwhile to have one of these. You can get into tiny little places and get those things done. Really, really a worthwhile tool. The next set of tools is what I consider to be also very essential, and they are angle grinders. I've got 3 of them here. I've actually got a couple more, and the more the merrier. And the reason I say that is if you get these angle grinders, and you can buy them on sale fairly cheap, is have one set up with a wire brush so you don't have to change it, have one set up with a cutoff wheel, and have one set up with a flapper disc, and maybe another one set up with you know, some sort of polishing device or something of that nature, but the more the merrier. And these things are just absolutely essential when you need to get something cleaned up or ground down, or you've got a bolt or something like that, and you don't have a regular grinder. You can just take this with a little wire wheel on it and be able to wire wheel off whatever you need to do. Be able to cut through whatever you want to cut through. This will cut through metal. You can get stuff that will cut off. Actually, this one's for ceramic. And I've got another one down in there that does metal. A flapper disc is always good. It's kind of a pain to have to change them all the time. Now, I have another one. I'll bring it over. And this is a Makita, but it's got a really cool system on it for removing the disc. You just pull on it and try to do that, and it pops right off. And when you want to put something different on it, we'll go grab a different one, like this grinding wheel. All you do is you take it and pop it on and you are done. So that's a pretty cool system on that one. That works well. And you can get a little adapter for it that allows you to put any kind of wheel on it without any special types of wheels. You can just take that and snap it on. And it also has a little handle on here, so you don't have to have any tools to remove it. Really a nice setup. I really like this X-Lock system. So one of the most useful tools you can have as a motorcycle mechanic, any type of mechanic actually, is a portable impact, battery powered. Yes, if you want to get, if you have air and it's easy, that's fine. But to be honest with you, I use this tool almost every day. And all it is, this is set up with a little bit of a, with a 3/8 drive on it. And it's just got the regular 1/4 inch hex fitting in it. But this, you can use screwdriver bits on it, you can use sockets, you can use anything, Allen drivers. It just makes life so much easier. You've got not a huge amount of power. Well, you can get them with a lot of power. This particular one doesn't have a lot of power, but it's very, very convenient for me. I don't want to have too much power. I'm not here to you know, tighten down bolts way too much or whatever. But again, if you just have a screwdriver bit on the end of this, you can just undo screws very, very quickly. Bolts, nuts, get everything good, nice and tight. It works extremely well, and it's extremely handy. And there are so many different ones out there. You don't have to get an expensive one. One that doesn't have a lot of power, especially if you're a motorcycle mechanic, really one without a lot of power is probably a good way to go. You don't end up hurting things with it. So consider one of these. These really, really work well. And again, you know, go to Amazon, find a cheap one. Doesn't have to be a great one. I like Makita because I have good luck with them, and I've got a battery system. So if you have a battery system, get one that goes along with the battery. Almost all the manufacturers have them. DeWalt, Ryobi, they all have one. And another very, very useful tool is a 1/2 inch impact, a very powerful one. This particular one, battery powered, Makita. This thing is really, really good. I've got air tools. If you have air, great, fine. But these battery powered guys are extremely powerful, and there's a lot of places you use this, especially when you need to like remove a countershaft sprocket, or a big clutch nut or something like that. Now, you don't want to be over torquing things down, but there are times when you need to work on your car and you need to remove the lug nuts, or you need to do whatever. These things are handy. You can get them, even the inexpensive ones from Amazon and the different places have got a ton of power. And if you're a motorcycle mechanic, it's probably plenty of power to do any kind of job that you really need to do. But there are times when having an impact works better than just having a breaker bar. And the reason I say that, is if things are rusted or really stuck, the impact does something different that people don't realize. And what they do is they send down a vibration, and that vibration starts shaking away at whatever's making it stick. And where you, instead of, if you have a big breaker bar, say, yeah, I can do anything with a breaker bar, and you just go ahead and do it, well, you may end up going on ahead and breaking the bolt, and you don't want that to happen. Where if you use an impact, that hammering effect will give you a 50% chance, I'd say 50%, a 50% chance of that bolt not breaking off. And if anything, if you lube around it, which, you know, we all talk about penetrating lubes and whatnot, where, you know, if you got a tight bolt, that lube doesn't really want to get in there very well. It tries to penetrate, but on a tight bolt, there's really no place for it to get in. When you run an impact on it, though, it hammers away at it, and it starts to just move things a little bit and allows some of that penetrating oil to get in. So it's always a good idea to consider coming up with some sort of impact to get big sticky bolts loose. There's nothing worse than having a sticky bolt, not whatever that's going to be, and it ends up breaking off, and then you got to play the game of tapping and you know, drilling, tapping, and doing all that stuff. And why, when an impact would have saved you the time and effort? And it also just saves effort. It makes things so much easier to work on. You can just go, you blast it off, go and get the job done, and then you can use them to wind things down. I like to tighten things by hand, but there are times when you just need to, you know, get something super tight, whatever that is. There's all sorts of ways to, you know, if you're using it for lug nuts and stuff, you can use torque sticks and things like that, but that's not a motorcycle tool that you would normally have. So one of the handiest tools you can have is a set of vernier calipers. They come in all sizes and shapes, huge, small, whatever. They are an indispensable part of working on things. Sometimes if you have to drill a hole or do whatever, you need to be able to know how far you need to do it. It's a good way of measuring things. If you need to set float levels on a motorcycle, this is the tool to have. The good part about it is these digital meters are inexpensive. They work extremely well. You can find them on sale for $10, $15 sometimes. But even not on sale, they're like 20 bucks. I mean, you can get really expensive ones and really good ones, but just an inexpensive set. But if you have this, it really works. So if you need to say you set your float levels or something like that, you go on ahead and set it to, let's say we got 25 millimeters. Oops, let me set this to millimeters. And we're at 10. We go to 25 millimeters ish. You can set it. And once you do that, then you've got this pin sticking out and you're able to put it on your floats and check, and it just works so easily. So always a good tool to have in your arsenal. So one of the things I think is one of the most important things to have as a motorcycle mechanic, and probably as an auto mechanic too, is a set of Allen drivers. You want the ball end. So if you look at, there's just a little ball on the end and it allows it to wobble around in there. But to me, the most important thing is getting the long versions. Something really long. A short version, such as this, is not bad, but these just make it so much easier. You can get further down in and get the stuff that's inaccessible. The long versions are the way to go. Now this particular one's a snap-on, but I've got others. This is Micro Pro, and it works okay for doing other stuff. Sometimes I need two of them. I've got like that, but the snap-on ones are fairly reasonable also, and they're really good quality. I've had this one for a few years and there's zero wear on it, and I use them all the time. really, really good thing to have. So here is a very interesting tool. It's a funnel, and what it has on it is a valve, so you can close it off, and then it's marked out a lot like a ratio right with all the different stuff that you need in there. You got, milliliters and cc's, and then for mixing 50, the different ratios for mixing two-stroke oil. What's nice about this is you can put it into whatever you're going to be using, like a front fork or something like that. Put that in, fill it up, and then when you're all ready, and the top fits on tightly, and it's got a really strong magnet on it also, so that makes it really nice. And then all you do is just once you've got it filled up to the perfect spot, you turn on the valve, and away you go. A really, really, really useful tool. And this funnel is made by Motion Pro, and it's called the Pro Funnel. So if you're looking for one, that's what you need to look for. And here is another really, really useful tool. It just looks like a plain old spark plug socket. But how many of you have fought where the ones with the rubber in it, and you put in a spark plug, and then it holds onto the spark plug, you put it down in a deep hole, and then you try to get the spark plug socket out, and it's just a battle, and you go fishing for it, and you gotta get it to let loose of the spark plug. That's one battle. Or the other battle is where it doesn't hold on to the spark plug, and then you go to use it and it drops it down inside, and now your gap has been compromised. So this spark plug socket's got a magnet in it, and it holds on to the spark plug just gently, and it will not come out. You can't shake it out, but it takes almost zero pressure to remove it. It makes changing a spark plug so much easier, especially in those big deep holes. On a regular spark plug, if it's out in the open, who cares? But if you have spark plugs that are in those deep holes, like my H2 and all my others, my Concords, the stick coil sits on top of it, and they're way down in there, and without this type of spark plug socket, it is a pain. And something no shop or mechanic should be without is a jumper. Many times we've come across a motorcycle, or you're working on a motorcycle, it's been sitting for a long time and the battery's dead, and now you've got to waste time charging up the battery. With one of these, you can just hook it up and go. And these things charge up, and they will start cars really, really easy. They're great for motorcycles, especially when you want to get things working and you don't have time to waste. So you get one of these, start it up, then you can go charge it at your leisure. Now here's a tool that no motorcycle mechanic should be without, and this is a clutch holding tool, kind of like a vice grip, and these jaws will fit into the inner hub of a motorcycle clutch. It works extremely well. So you can clamp onto it, it locks on, and then you can take and either torque it if you're torquing it, or break it loose if you need to break it loose. These work extremely well, and they're available now. There's a lot of manufacturers out there, and the ones to get are the ones with pins. These are old. These were made way back when, but there's pins which will hold a flywheel also. This will hold a flywheel if there's big enough holes in it. So this is a really, really handy tool. And here is something that no motorcycle mechanic should be without, and that is a compression gauge. This particular one has got different, you can put different fittings on it for different size spark plugs. Here is an old Mac that I've had for 50 years, and it is only for 14 by 125, but it gets used a lot because on work and older bikes it's just that way. And it's a little easier to use. You kind of just screw the whole thing in, and that's it. So as you can see, it's pretty worn down from just being used, and this thing has been used probably thousands of times. So here's a recent discovery that I found, is these carbide tip gasket scrapers. They got a square end on them and they're carbide, and they are basically very, very sharp, but they don't dig in because of the square tip. I got a couple of them here. Here's a nice wide one so I can go over wide areas, and I got a smaller one for getting into other ones. I have been using this type of gasket scraper for, well, I probably bought this one maybe 50 years ago, and it's done an admirable job. It's been great. And of course this one here, which is again probably 50 years old, these are all old snap-on ones, but this is all we had. But these new ones, if you get a chance, get yourself a carbide scraper. It makes the job so much easier. And another set of really handy tools are these step drills. They are very universal. You can throw them into your drill and be able to get most of the sizes you need. Here's one that does some smaller increments, and then of course there's a little bit fatter one that does fatter increments, and I've got some more that do even bigger ones. But you can just throw this in your drill, and at least you can get your holes drilled fairly easily without having to go through have a whole big set of drills. These work great, and I get these at Harbor Freight, and the Harbor Freight ones work very well. They're not bad at all. And that is what I think every motorcyclist or motorcycle mechanic, whether you're going to be a pro, whether you're just going to work in your shop, those are the tools that make life so much easier. They aren't necessary, but it really does. When you go to, when you need a meter, you've got the right tool. If you got to put a spark plug in some deep hole, you can do that. And just be able to do all around work and work on a bike or fabricate stuff. So again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like this kind of video, please hit the like button, and we'll see you next time on Gearhead Geeks.